there was no motive whatsoever advanced, and there was no connection other than the fact that she clearly had been killed in the yard and then her body moved. So we focused on that. Unfortunately, there was a tremendous amount of evidence dealing with things like the possibility that somebody had ridden a cycle back, which sadly disregarded the fact that there was a pretty clear indication right from October the 25th that the car wasn't there until well after the time when all of the cyclists were talking about. The other issue had been always this: the DNA was an issue. I don't know how it was disregarded, and frankly, I don't know why this prosecution proceeded in the way it did, because as some of you will know, the original opinions, plural, from prosecutors in Alberta was not to lay a charge, and that decision was countermanded effectively when it was sent to British Columbia for decision on prosecution. Nothing whatsoever had changed. The difficulty with deciding to prosecute this case was that you had the entire community left with the impression that there was something new or different or more substantial than there had been before, and there wasn't. There was never any additional evidence. And secondly, the way in which the case proceeded with motive, I think, left a very inaccurate and unflattering and disrespectful picture that really shouldn't have been put forward. It wasn't accurate at all.
We never know why a jury reached the decision they did. They obviously don't share their reasons, but how important was it to put your client on the stand, and how much of a factor do you think that was, his testimony of more than a week?
Well, the decision to have Mr. Stobbe testify was a decision made with pretty careful consideration. It was pretty clear at the end of the Crown's case that there really was not anything there that had not been anticipated, and at the end of the day, I thought there was a big problem. The tough decision always is when you have somebody who says I didn't do it and wants to be able to advance that story. You have to consider the tactical disadvantage that comes from then having to address the jury first and not have the final word, which obviously was a very significant factor in this case. I think when we heard the arguments presented after my closing, I really was wondering exactly what it was that the jury would be considering in terms of the proven facts.
So Tim, there was never any doubt in your mind of Mr. Stobbe's innocence?
No, it was clear to me throughout this entire trial that the jury was paying very careful attention to what was going on. I think it was, at least from our perspective, very focused in terms of where we were going. What we wanted to establish always was that what occurred here was a horrible tragedy, the most tragic thing that could have occurred. Clearly, whatever had happened, it would naturally cause suspicion to be pointed at Mr. Stobbe. But as you heard, after an extraordinarily thorough investigation involving hundreds of witnesses, hundreds of wiretap conversations and everything else, there really was nothing whatsoever that tied him in. And at the end of the day, that clearly is the way the case ended. There just was nothing there to tie him into this.